Hey guys, this is Michael, aka Monk Business, and this is my design pitch for the designers of Duelyst 2 to let me in on their little design group. Basically, I fucking love Duelyst. It's the best game I've ever played, and I think the current team is doing a good job with Duelyst 2. I think all of the remakes, all of the rehashes of cards, all the changes, I don't disapprove of any of those. And I'm just here to make my suggestions of how to make the game even better. So let's get into it. So these are the topics that I will go through in this presentation. So you can quickly skip over the stuff you don't really care about. This is the order. Monetization. I'm going to talk a little bit about shadow creep, the issues with it right now. I'm gonna go through the Duelyst 1 mechanics. I actually think the original Duelyst 1 team did a pretty good job. So I'm gonna review the sets and the mechanics, what we should maybe use in the future and what we should dumpster. And then I'm gonna go through a bunch of balancing suggestions. And of course, in general, this whole thing is just a suggestion. I'm not saying that this is perfect work. Okay, so monetization. The problem with the current monetization is actually not that much the value itself. Well, there is some value issues, but the real problem is actually the experience rather than the actual value. And I'm gonna go through and say why the experience matter. So first off, duplicate protection. A lot of people are talking about this, and there's a lot of reasons why this works. Duplicate protection means that you make crafting feel better. There's nothing worse than crafting a card and then you get that same card in the next pack or in the next couple of packs and you just feel like you screwed over yourself in terms of spirit and dust or whatever it's called. And because of this, people actually try to hold on off of crafting for as long as possible, which gives them a worse play experience. Like they want to craft this card and play this deck, but they don't because, they might draw it later. So duplicate protection makes people more willing to just make the things they want. Also, even though RNG or randomness is always perfectly fair, that's not how people perceive it. Like getting 10 of one legendary and 0 of another might be correct randomness, but people are gonna feel like, that's actually not, they must have made a mistake with the randomness. So making duplicate protection also gets you over that issue. Then in general, the values of packs go up. I think right now one of the biggest issues is that pack value is kind of low. And then I would add so that every card you get above 3, like if you have all commons, let's say, that means that all commons are just automatically disenchanted. And you get the spirit instantly. So you don't have to think about whether like going in and disenchanting extra cards. It just removes an extra step from you. And what this also does is that people cannot hoard cards. Currently, I think there's an issue where people, they hoard cards in case they will get changed later. And this is again about the experience and how you manipulate or like negatively the game manipulates people into boring gameplay. So instead of just disenchanting all the extras so you can make the cards you want and play the game, people actually sit on, I drew 6 Archons, so I'm not going to disenchant the 3 extra Archons because in case it gets nerfed, I can get extra value. It's all of this holding on to value in the future instead of having fun now. And the designer should make it so that the experience is better, so that people are not incentivized to act in certain ways. Duplicate protection also means that if you really care, like you really love one faction, you can disenchant your other cards and go into that faction, and then when you get packs later on, again, you don't get the cards you already enchanted, you will only get the older cards. As an extra thing to this duplicate protection, I would add just straight up spirit into the packs. This way, because with duplicate protection it takes longer before you actually start getting spirit. So this way you have some spirit that you can use and focus into the decks you want instead of just getting random stuff all the time. And there's a lack of choosing where you want to go. Like you open your first 20 packs, okay, you maybe know which decks you have more cards of, and then you choose, okay, I want to build Magmar, and then you start crafting into the Magmar. Give people more the option to tune where they want to put their resources. So just add fucking spirit into the packs. It also adds more value to the packs. Going into the buying experience, I think right now, if you are a paying customer, it actually fucking sucks to pay. Like right now, you need approximately 300 packs to get a full collection. And of course, you don't need a full collection to have fun. But if you're already gonna spend money, people are spending money in order to get to that point. And the ratio sucks. Like $300, $1 per pack right now, it sucks big balls. It actually disincentivizes people from buying more packs and funding the project, and we want the project to be funded. So right now, I would actually straight up just half the price on top of all the other steps here. Like make it so you get twice as many packs for your money. And then right now, there's also a problem that when you get close to having your full collection, well, why do you want to buy more packs? And here, prismatics is a part of the system. Like you want people who really care a lot to be able to actually get prismatics. Like be able to spend more money to get more prismatics. And right now, prismatic drop rate just sucks too much. Like it's too hard to get even one deck built out in prismatics, even if you spend $1,000. It's too hard to do. So you have to double the prismatic drop rates, which will then incentivize people to actually put money into the packs. So this is like, again, experience versus actual value. Okay, second part of monetization is like the quest experience. Right now, the quests are way too hard to do. The big quest, the 50 gold quest, takes an hour, usually an hour to clear. People don't have a fucking hour, and especially if you're gonna move into mobile, you need to cut those quests down. In competing games, such as Marvel Snap, clearing a whole day of quests take 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That's where we want to go, because people want to just put in a little bit here and there. And then if you clear the quests fast and you enjoy the game, you're just gonna keep playing the game. And you already have the 15 gold every 5 win incentive. Just keep that in. Like people are gonna keep playing. You just need the quest to have a reason for people to come in daily. So you have to halve the requirement straight up. Like the play X games as a certain deck, have to put it down to 2 instead of 4. And like the big quest, deal 150 damage or play 8 games, you have to straight up halve it down to 4 games or 75 damage instead. Just make it faster to go through those quests. Also, there's no stacking. And I think stacking lets people have some breathing room in order to stack some quests or have multiple days that they can replace. It is not 100% that you need to do this, because it's also nice to have an incentive to come in every day. But yeah, that's just a general thought you can have. And you don't actually need to increase the gold too much. Just a little bit here and there. I think, for example, the small quest for 20 gold, you can put that to 30. And the bigger quest for 50 gold, you can put that to 60. And it's fine. It's enough. And while we're at it, we have the weekly challenge on the image here to the left. Just make that better. Like, why is this 30 gold? Just give a pack straight up. Just give a pack. Make people feel it's once a week. It's a rare occurrence. Just make people feel like they get something from doing it. It's all about the feeling. And it's the same here on the next topic. The welcome back quest is straight up offensive. It would be better not to have it. When you first come in and you missed fucking 50 gold on one day because you didn't have an hour to spend, and you get a message that says, oh, you get 5 gold, congratulations. It's a fuck off moment. It's like an instant quit moment for players. Like, it would be just better if it didn't exist. But I think the welcome back is actually a good idea in general. So you just have to make it better. it's still better to gain gold during to do the dailies, even if it's 50% of the original value. So let's say you skip a 20 gold quest, you get 10 gold. If you skip a 50 gold quest, you get 25 stacked up. So that's just how you have to just do that value instead. It's much better. And also currently the higher caps just increase the caps. If people go on holiday and they come back, it's a good time. It's a good situation where you come back and it says, "Oh, there's 500 gold waiting for you." That's cool. That makes people want to play the game more. And of course, all of these suggestions are based on current engine. I think if you made a new engine, new opportunities, maybe think about stacking quests, think about making a monthly season pass. Just gives you some more stuff and where you can group more quests together. But I think just working on the current system and making it better is also very important. And it's much faster. All of my suggestions here is just changing some numbers around, and it already feels much better. Okay, so that was the monetization part. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the mechanics. It's highly discussed in the community. So shadow creep. I think shadow creep needs a remake, and there's a few reasons why. First of all, it's just too hard to support. You cannot really add more generating cards. If you add more generating cards early, the burst at the end scales out of control. And if you make more endgame cards, well, then they are either going to be useless or OP. There's no fine-tunement of mechanics here. And the second reason I think it needs to change is that the current implementation is just a burst mechanic. It doesn't matter where the creep is. You're just counting it up. It could just be a number on your general, and all the cards could just be increase that number by 1, and then you have your card at the end that says deal damage equal to the number you have on your general. It's literally a counting mechanic. It's not a tile mechanic. So I think it needs to be changed so it matters more. The map matters more. The gameplay matters more. So what do we actually want? Well, the flavor of creep is that it's spreading over the board slowly and taking over the space you can stay on, right? It's creeping. It's literally in the name. And the mechanics we want is that position matters, and that people change their normal play patterns depending on where the creep is. You position differently, and then you can zone areas. And zoning also means that we might have to think about giving a vision more mechanics where you want to keep someone in a defensive place and zone enemies from coming into that area. Whether or not this actually works in practice, we'll have to just test it, but this is the theory. So my suggestion is just make it 2 damage flat out. The old remake made it 1 damage, and I think 1 damage just didn't matter enough. The 2 damage is where it has that sweet spot where it's annoying to get hit. You don't want your units to be hit, but you could make that decision. You could do it if you really wanted to. And then it's very important, never print cards that just count creep, because it just goes back to what it was before. In Duelyst 1, creep ended up being a ping mechanic. You put it somewhere just to deal 1 damage. It's basically Blood Tier Alchemist. And then a counting mechanic. And you spam it, and people never step on it. And if they did, it didn't really matter. And then you just had your obliterate at the end to burst them down. So it actually didn't change anything in the mechanic. So I think in general you have to try and limit yourself to not printing card that counts creep. And if you do, it has to be something slow, like a minion that gets buffed up. Focus on the board mechanics of this of this creep tile. And I think it's also interesting to maybe generate creep on your opponent's turn, so they can react to it, or maybe they have to play differently. So with that in mind, here's some examples of remakes for the old system. We have Abyssal Crawler. Now, when it dies, it puts a creep tile on the thing that killed it, if there is something. In this way, it becomes do I actually want to sacrifice a unit into it? Maybe it's too broken, maybe it has to be a 1/1, I don't know. But That's the idea here. And Darkspine Elemental we change into just a stat stick if your opponent is on creep tile. Juggernaut we don't really have to change too much, just make it so that it can also attack and put a creep tile on the enemy. It only deals 2 damage, so basically this is a 5/5, right? And then Shadow Nova, make it a 3/3 area. It means that in certain situations you can force your opponent to move in very specific ways, or you can make it so that it cannot escape an area. It's also just AoE. I don't think Shadow Nova at 5 in this situation would be broken. It could maybe even go to 4. And then some random future ideas, some inspired by the old Duelyst, for example Klaxon. Instead of putting random tiles, why not put it nearby? It means if you trade into it, you will get hit by creep. It's that like make the opponent think about their place kind of gameplay, and it's also provoke. So if you have creep already and so the opponent step on it, you can provoke them down, force them to take more damage unless they deal with the Klaxon. Then Impalement could be an interesting mechanic that just trigger it. Just deal damage nearby creep. Always focus on the area part of creep. And I have Lure Skitter here, which is just maybe make some mechanics that trigger when your opponent take damage. For example, the old Shadow Sister. She healed you every time. I think you could easily bring her back. She synergizes so well with creep and also synergizes with wraithlings that go in and deal damage. Put more of those kind of things into Abyssian. Yeah, and then this one is not really that serious, but just some people complain about Spectral Blade being broken, so you could just change it to make a Shadow Creep tile on whatever hits you. It still effectively gives your hero +2 damage, but now it also becomes a mechanical card. Basically, yeah, just an example. Okay, so now we are to Duelyst 1 mechanics, and I'm gonna put down a review, and I would say generally Duelyst 1 team I think did a good job. They had good concept, fun build around cards. They just needed to balance much more and remove some of the outlying RNG bullshit. Now I'm gonna go through the mechanics just to say, well, some of these things could be interesting to bring back. The battle pets, I think they're just too convoluted. It's too hard for new players to actually to learn that mechanic. They have to go online and get it explained. The RNG of battle pets hitting one or another thing is also kind of annoying. Even though it had certain rules, at some point it was random. The only interesting thing about battle pets is that your opponent is kind of playing your cards. But I think already just playing cards on the board is there's quite a lot of depth to it, so I don't think you need a battle pet mechanic. So just it's iffy. Blood Surge is basically kind of like it's just a way to have something that you can on demand do at a certain timing. In this situation, they activate every second turn because you could use your hero power every second turn, and there's a little bit of play with, oh, do I use the mana to get my Blood Surge or whatever, but in general I think Blood Surge didn't add much, and also, well, we don't have BBS, so why do we even care about it? Then they had the new golems they added in, and they're just boring. They have no identity. They're generally just strong cards that are all over the place. Like some golems came down, instantly fought something. Some golems came down and buffed something. Some golems had a bunch of keywords. The golems' original identity is big boys without any effect, and then a few cards that help those big boys. Either they cost less with Metallurgist, or they have taunt, so it's harder to get away from the big boys. I think golems in general should stay in that kind of area. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but that kind of area. Then we had Bond, which was usually just a golem mechanic. A few Arcanists had it, but for some reason Vestbeers didn't have it, Dervishes didn't have it, and Bond is just kind of boring. It's just an opening gambit with a condition. It needs more, like you would need more unit types to make Bond interesting, and I think in general it also just makes deck building into search for Arcanist, put them all in, search for golem, put them all in, instead of actually deck building around mechanics instead, and synergy. So Bond is meh. Then there was the new tiles. There was the healing tile, the grow tile, and the sand spawning tile. And I actually think all of these tiles are great gameplay mechanics. They have board-centric gameplay. You can kind of block each other. You can stand on their sand tile. They don't get a guy. Your opponent also has to not stand on it. Like you has to try and make the space appear so you get it. The healing tiles you can kind of set up so you can do your heal combos later. Or you have to decide, oh, do I want the heal or do I want to run away in sticky situations? Like, do I think the heal will keep me alive or do I think the distance will keep me alive? There's a lot of thoughts going into the gameplay while you're doing this. And the same with the grow tile. The grow tile was the least powerful one, but I think also the most interesting one in terms of, oh, do you want to keep your minion becoming stronger and stronger? In that case, you cannot use it at that time because it has to stay on the tile. So there's some pull and puff, some pulling there where you're like, when do I invest my minion into attacking? When do I cash in on this power? And when do I just greed it up? I think in general, a lot of the cards were kind of iffy. The Sand Swirler, for example, didn't really fit into Vitruvian's archetype, like what they did normally. But for example, the Fault that just made the whole middle line is a very interesting card. So yeah, new tiles are fucking amazing. Then we have the Sentinels. Sentinels are just... They were theoretically a really good idea. Like you had some bluffing elements, you put the unit down, but I think in practice it usually didn't really matter. It often felt like your opponent would just do their best play anyways, and then either you got the payoff or you didn't. I think the Sentinels were also a little bit too hard to understand for a lot of players. So it's okay, but it's not really that great. Like it's iffy. And I would say iffy is better than meh in this situation, just so you know my ranking. Then we have the build mechanic. I think the build mechanic is great. Like you can use build mechanic as... There's so many great designs you can use here. And there's this... Do you put it close so that it's... When it builds, it's actually ready and can reach things? Or do you put it out of the way in order for your opponent not to hit it, but then when it is ready, it takes longer for it to actually come back into the game, and you have to think about, do I put this minus tempo now in order to gain tempo later? Can I do that? Or you have designs where you have a weak unit that is hidden behind 10 health building. I think build is just amazing, honestly. Then we had all the new mechs. I think there was a lot of mistakes in the new mechs. We had Metal Tooth, which gave Rush, which just broke it wide open. Nightmare Operant, which was just bullshit RNG. And then Deceptibot, for example, which just didn't have anything to do with the mechs. Like you kill something and then you bring out another Deceptibot, and you put 3 Deceptibots in your deck. I think that was iffy, but there was also good themes. Like there was Silver, which was build your own Mechasaur if you have the things on the board. I think that really hits the flavor. The flavor of mech is you have all these small pieces that build out a big boy in the end. Like builds out the big mech, combining keywords into a big unit. So a lot of the mechs were fine in this in the set, and I think the mechs were good, but just a little bit extra, and they could have been great. We have Intensify. I think Intensify is a basic mechanic. It's kind of simple, but it's also easy to understand, and it really allows some cool card designs and some fun deck buildings. There's not much to say. It's simple. It's okay. And then we have the Destiny and the Trial mechanics, the last bullshit we got. And games just gets too streamlined with that. Instead of building around having multiple synergies in your deck and having some clear goal, now the Trial Destiny card is just, here is the goal, do this thing. And they were so powerful that it ended up being a lot of decks just did that thing. I think in general, you could probably tune this to be a little bit different and it would be great. But it's meh. We could bring it back, but it's not on the top of my list. Okay. And then we have the set reviews, and it's kind of some refresh here. It's going to be a lot of the same things. But just so you know where I'm coming from, I think Denizens of Shimsar had a lot of fun cards. Fuck Falchius though. too strong. Battle pets were not bad design, but they weren't really that amazing either. But I think the general like supporting archetypes, making more archetype playable, I think Shimza did a great job of that. Then we have Bloodbound Ancients, which is just BBS spam and golden bullshit. I think this set was 2 smaller sets, and they were really the worst sets of the game. And then they combined the 2 sets later on to make more money, which just gives you even worse taste in your mouth. Unearthed Prophecy introduced the tiles, had really cool unit design, generally fun build-arounds, cool obelisk. It was a bit undertuned, but I think that was also why it was very interesting. They tried to make more archetypes interesting. You have Immortal Vanguard introduced build. If they had better mech design, I think it would really be a 5 out of 5 set for me. I think looking through the cards, there was a lot of great designs. And then Trial of Mithran. Like, this set was supposed to be the set that came in together with Rotation, which was later removed. But because of that, a lot of the cards were very boring and basic. They were just supposed to replace the basic cards from the first set. And there's a lot of refresh. There is in Shimza, there was a card that spell that reduced all future Dying Wish cards mana cost in the deck. And here you got a unit that did the same, also cost 2 mana, but now it's a unit that's a 1/1 instead. It's just they planned to remove 1 card and then just introduce the same card but slightly different. This is why I hate rotations, by the way, but that's a question for another time. Trials and Destiny cards were completely unbalanced. Some were garbage and some were way too broken and warped the game, and they were just too convoluted. Intensify is kind of like the only saving grace, but it cannot save such a shit set. Okay, so now we're back into balancing. A lot of people talk about 2 draw versus 1 draw. I think in general, having more draw makes you have more options through the game. And right now, card draw is still important. It's not like card draw has been removed as a mechanic. If you see Songhai, they have 3 of their card draws in there. They have the Fox to refill the hand, a bunch of draw in there. And a lot of, like, if you go very aggro, you need the card draw to refill your resources. But it also makes it so that you could go mid-range, you can curve without actually having any draw in your deck. And I think that was that wasn't really present in Duelyst 1. You always need a draw in Duelyst 1. And people say, oh, but it's too strong for aggro. I think it's just about balancing. Like, if aggro is too strong, then nerf it a little bit. If late game drops are too strong, then nerf them a little bit. So it's just a balancing question. I have played a lot of card games, and for example, I played Cardfight Vanguard, and in that game, you get fucking 3 draws through mechanics every turn. And that didn't break the game. It just made the game more interesting. So how many cards you draw doesn't really matter. It's just a balancing question. I think, though, that hard removal is too strong and too cheap. And that's one of the issues with why you cannot put big drops down. And because hard removal is so strong, a lot of the big drops have been overtuned, so that if you don't have an answer, you just instantly lose. I think that's not good game design either. It should be about playing the board, not about, I have a big thing, do you have an answer? Yes, no. Okay, I win. If they had an answer, they win, because now they've fucking 4 mana or 5 mana hidden tempo. I think tuning the hard removal is important. Then just some general thoughts about balancing. Just make more balancing. Like, make more cards playable. Balancing is content. People are really excited about when balancing happens. Just look at Yu-Gi-Oh! Whenever there's a ban list, like, people are coming back to play the new game. Like, now the meta has shifted. It's a new game. They're coming back. They're talking about it online. It's just an exciting time. So just do it more. And this is digital. You have no excuse. Don't strive for the perfect balance. You can balance card multiple times. If you over nerf a card, just bring it back. If you over buff a card, just bring it back. Just let people play more different things. Make it exciting. Like, make each season different. Yeah, it's kind of down here like balance is equal to meta shift. Just change the cards. People will get bored It's a digital card game. You play every fucking day. It's not like a physical card game where you play once a week with your friends. You get exposed to the game much more, and thus you also need to change the game much more often. And I think a lot of people don't think about that fact, that there is this difference between Magic and Hearthstone, because Hearthstone you play every day, Magic you play once a week. How often you get exposed to the same thing, it means you want to get new changes much more often in digital games. And it's lucky that it's so much easier to also do changes in physical games, so just do it. Of course, the following that I'm gonna make here is just my suggestions. I don't have the actual data. That's gonna be Dreamslot who actually have the data, so they can pick and choose from this list here. So let's start with Linar. Generally, I'm actually gonna start with nerfs, but I forgot I put in the buff here first. Sunstone Templar. I think right now Sunstone Templar is kind of pointless. Its effect is kind of pointless, because if you want to have a unit that you drop at a certain place, you can literally just play Planar Scout. You place it where you want to drop that specific unit, and then you drop that unit afterwards. Like for example, if you want to put Rook at a specific place so you can walk a lot and then deal a lot of damage, just put Planar Scout, put Rook next to it, it walks down and do the thing you want. So instead, just change Sunstone Templar to permanently give you airdrop into your hand. So you can kind of, now you play it down, but then the next turn, if you keep it alive, then you keep the airdrop. Just make it more interesting that way. And then Martyrdom, I talked about removal. Just nerf Martyrdom. It's way too free. It's way too easy just to remove whatever in the early game, get a giant tempo swing, and even in the late game, like you might heal your opponent 8 life, but you also just save yourself getting hit in the face for 8, and now you're way ahead on tempo. Martyrdom is just too strong. Put it to 3 mana. Okay, so Songhai. Looking through Songhai is actually really hard to choose what you want to change, because Songhai is just kind of broken. But here I have 2 suggestions for Mana Vortex. The first one is just a simple one. Right now, all the mana reducers, they have some kind of negative part to them. You have Darkfire Sacrifice, you need a unit to sacrifice in order to actually use it. You have Flash. Flash deals 2 damage to the unit. In some cases you can use that, but in most of the case, that's a nerf to the unit that you're summoning out. Mana Vortex doesn't have a negative, but that's also why it only reduces with 1. But then for some reason it has an extra draw on it. Like it removes the only negative that it has, which is that you lose a card. But now, you don't lose a card. So now it's just the freest card in the world. So I would just change it to this. If it turns out to be too weak for some reason, I don't think so. You can add it so that at least if it's the only spell you have, you can still use it. But I think just change it to this. Make it a deliberate choice to put it in your spell deck, not just, of course, free off, because it's never bad like it is right now. Then there's Tossball. Tossball is just broken. Why is there a Phoenix Fire that you then either deal 6 damage or you get it back and you can use it again next turn? It's the same cost. It can take mana tiles. It's just way too strong. And I think you can just simply make it a 2/3. And it would still be good. It's draw 2. It's not like in draw 1 where Tossball was actually still good, but just make it balanced. It's not that hard. If you really want to, you can make it 3/2 instead, but I don't know. I just think do the simple choice here. Then we have Blood Rage Mask. Again, Blood Rage Mask deals an average of fucking 9 damage or 10 damage for 1 mana, which is bullshit. It needs some setup, and it doesn't really do anything on the board, but you don't need that because you put it on and you walk away. Just make it 2 mana. Make it harder to put it in together with all your spells. Make it a bigger investment if you put it on early, especially in the early game. Like before, you can Tossball and run up, take the mana tile, equip Blood Rage Mask. On 2 mana, at least you cannot do that. And my other suggestion is kind of also in the same vein. Make it worse in the early game. this one will switch between healing and dealing damage. It might still be too broken, but at least you're not just killing your opponent. It's an investment you make, and then you survive a little longer, but you're still losing the board, and you're not killing the opponent as fast. I think just do the simple thing, but you could do the more advanced weird thing. And then a buff, I will give Shanghai a buff. Death Strike Seal. There's no reason for Death Strike Seal to be 2 mana. You have so much removal that is already 2 mana, and Death Strike Seal have so many requirements. You need a minion to put it on that will then hit into something else. So you lose the minion, or at least the minion get retaliated, but if you want to kill a big thing, you're probably going to lose the minion that you're hitting into it, unless you have ranged. The minion is going to die. You need board setup in order for it to work, and most of the time your opponent can answer it. It's just very situational, and especially in Songhai, there isn't that many combos you can use with Death Strike Seal yet, at least. But try it at 1 mana and see what happens. Like right now it's not getting played at all. Okay, then we have Vitruvian. I have no idea. I actually feel that Vitruvian is very balanced, as long as everything else gets tuned down a little bit. Oh yeah, I also want to say to Songhai, there is some cards that is on the watch list here. You have cards like, let me find my notes. 4 Winds, Inner Focus, and Lancerfox. All of those are on the watch list, but just try this first, and then you can nerf the other ones later. Vitruvian, maybe you can put Star's Fury to 4. It's not that strong. But otherwise, I think Vitruvian is actually really balanced and very interesting in general. Like, their weak cards are good enough, and the strong cards are bad enough that they're just really good and really well balanced. So, time for Ambition. Night Sorrow. Fuck Night Sorrow Assassin. It's just too strong. It deals too much damage after it comes down. Again, I have the simple solution, which is just put its attack down. It destroys the flavor a little bit, but just put its attack down, it kills the same thing as before. Just small tuning. You can always tune it more later, as I mentioned before. Or you can make it completely different, so that it deals damage to a minion with 3 or less. So you can kind of kill small things, or you can do an indent into something bigger, but not just freely kill it. I have buffed its attack to compensate. I think maybe a 3/3 might be too strong, but I'm not completely sure. Again, all of these things is just my gut feeling. I think this one, probably just choose the first. Reaper of the Nine Moons. Reaper of the Nine Moons, I actually really love the redesign. It's very interesting, it's elegant. It really fits into Ambition. Like, you can fly it somewhere and sacrifice it, teleport your opponent away from you. You can fly on a creep tile, sacrifice it, teleport the opponent over to a creep tile or into an unfavorable position for them. You can trade with a big thing, because you put it away, you fly in and trade. I think the problem with Reaper is just it's a utility card, and it's way too expensive. Like, this kind of utility card needs to be cheaper so that you can use it as utility, because it's not gonna swing the game for you. It's not a safe play. Just make it cheaper, and you can nerf the stats a little bit. Actually, this might be too strong, 6/3, otherwise might get a 5/3. But just try something, because right now Reaper is not good. Okay, Magmar. Magmar is also bullshit faction, so that's why we split it into 2 parts. First off, Spirit Harvester. Spirit Harvester is way too strong. Like, why is Spirit Harvester a big body and a strong removal effect? You have to choose one or the other. I even consider making it a 4/4 instead of a 4/5. But just make it a 4/5, see what happens. You could also make it a 4/4, really overtune it, and then you can reel it back afterwards. But I think Spirit Harvester has so much value on the board, there's no reason for it to just be a good 5-drop also. Mercantor. Fuck Mercantor. You can do the simple fix, put it to free attack, or make it a 4/3 instead, so it dies more easily. Or you can do a little bit more advanced, make it harder for your opponent to put it into that perfect position. If you make it like this, so it can only move 1 space, you can kinda you make the game more board centric, but I just think that this might be too little of a nerf. The interesting thing about this though is that after the Mercantor you can just walk away from it, and it might not even be able to reach you again, which kind of fixed the issue of you have to deal with Mercantor after it hits, which is also some of the broken stuff about it. I think I like this the most, like to test it out, but I think in the end it might just have to be the simple change. Mercantor was never changed in all of Duelyst 1. I think it's a big mistake to have so much of the core set be what you need to play all the time. Like, the fun of a card game is that you're playing different things, and in Magmar, didn't matter what deck you're making aggro, you're making mech, you're making whatever, you always put Mercantor in. I think that's a bad thing for the game. Instead, Mercantor should just be, oh, does it fit into my deck? Do I need more removal? Do I need more aggro? Maybe I put Warbeast. Do I need more mid-range? Maybe I put Warbeast. But if I'm going balls to the walls, draw combo or spam combo, maybe I don't need Warbeast. Then we have Vindicator. And Vindicator, I think honestly just fucking remake it. But I have made a few suggestions just in case we want to keep some of the current spirit of it. The first one here is the same, but now there's a limit to free costs, so you can still use it with your small guys, but now a Spirit Harvester is not coming out and hitting you in the face. So now Vindicator becomes more of a, I put this into my aggro deck kind of thing. Alternatively, you can put it more into the Magmar self-damage pool. I think currently only Kujata and Flash Reincarnation works with this. So it has some issues, but I think it opens up for some new design space also in the future. And the third option, just change it completely. Make it something else. Okay, we also have some buffs. Right now, Solar Wrath, don't even play Earthsphere, because compared to Emerald Rejuvenator, it just really doesn't do enough. Tune it a little bit. You could put it to 9, put it to 10. Just try it out and see what happens. Then you have Chrysalis Burst. Chrysalis Burst literally could make a whole separate play pattern for Magmar, where you try to play out a bunch of things that survives, and then you try to flood the board. But Chrysalis Burst is way too expensive. Like right now, if you have this, let's say you have Silithar on the board, in order for this one to be valuable, you have to play another 2-drop and play this on 5 mana, and then then both X have to survive and you get 2 Silithars. Like, what the payoff for this compared to how many hoops you have to jump through is just way too low. So reduce the mana cost, make it easier to play together with multiple units. It's gonna die to AoE anyways, so. And then Leviathan. I think I really like the idea of Leviathan, but the biggest issue about Leviathan is, let's say you get it out and your opponent doesn't have anything on the board. You could say, then I can hit my own face and I can get 4 attack. That's cool. The only issue being this is a 7 mana card, which means at that time you're probably you're just getting closer to death, and also you can just hit itself. Like, your 11-drop comes out and it becomes easier to kill, and your opponent can still run away from it, they can still remove it or whatever, but now it's even easier to kill because it just hit itself and it didn't do anything. So the very quick fix is to just add another. Make it so that if you drop it down, it cannot hit itself. Or I would actually just make it even less random. And it might sound like this is more random, but like distributing randomness makes things more consistent. That's why I really love the White Widow change, for example. Now it's easier to hit the things you want to hit with White Widow. And then you can do the same to Unstable Leviathan. Just split out the damage into multiple things. So now if you hit your own hero 2 times, he gets +2 attack permanently, which is great. Cool design. And now some of them might hit enemies. Some of it might kill a Jax or whatever. This could actually be kind of viable with this change. Okay. Vanar. Fenrir Warmaster, just keep it a free, but make the wolf a free too. Just make a small change and see what happens to Fenrir Warmaster. I think Warmaster is at a spot where it's good, but it's also a little bit boring. So people have to choose, oh, do I want this maybe with a Lady Luck deck, because then I can kill my War Master and get Ghost Wolf on the same turn as Lady Luck. Like that kind of deck type, instead of just being an auto-include in everything. Then we have Razorback. I think Razorback is just a load of bullshit. I tried to put it into the infiltration zone so that, let's say you play out Jax. Now you want to put the Jax on the infiltrated side in order to play up your Razorback, and your opponent can kind of choose to prioritize the infiltrated Jaxies instead of just taking whatever is closest to them. It adds more dynamics, and if you're playing a Lady Luck deck, maybe you're thinking more about where you lock your opponent. If you have a Razorback in your hand, just make Razorback more interesting this way. It might be too big of a nerf. You could even change it to a free, or keep it like this and have it so that it can also buff itself maybe. Just try it out, because right now Razorback is just, lol, I played, lol, you die. Oh, you didn't have an out for Jax? I guess you die. It's not interesting. It's not game-centric or board-centric gameplay. Wolfraven, here's some buffs. Wolfraven cannot take damage from units with 3 or more attack, but the issue right now is it dies to a 2-drop and your hero, and the opponent's hero. Just put it to 5. Make it so that it can tank 2 times 2 damage. And it's probably still going to be shit, but at least it might be worth consideration now. An aspect of the Wyrm. Wyrm is already, if you're putting it on your own unit, let's say you're changing, what's it called, the 2-1 into a 4-4, it means you're giving it +2, +3 for 4 mana. And then it also gets flying, but it doesn't really matter most of the time. So, even if you put it on your own smallest unit, the buff is still way too expensive. If you put it on your opponents to get rid of something big, you're still giving them a 4-4 with flying, and the removal costs fucking 4 mana. I think aspect of the Wyrm, you could just put to 3 mana and it would be fine. This one is the most risky of these. I think Mesmerize is close to being interesting, like close to building a whole new mechanical identity for Vanar. But it might just be too frustrating to play against in general. I would try to add draw 1 to it, make it advantage neutral. You're still losing tempo, you still have to invest into it, but I think it's hard. This might be a little bit too strong, but just try it, because right now Mesmerize sucks dick. So okay, for neutrals I'm gonna be more rapid fire, because these are mostly just small buffs all over the place. So we have more sucks. Why not make it a 2/2 like a Scavenger? There's no reason not to. We have Sandborrower. Sandborrower is so horribly statted that even if you try to put it in together with Hollow Grove Keeper, or maybe you put it in Vitruvian to give it taunt, provoke it's called, there's so many outs, so many ways to deal it damage, and because of the stats it has, it, even if the opponent get out of the, like, if they have some kind of out, it just dies. It's just never good, even in its own deck. Just buff it up a little, make it better in case your opponent get rid of it anyways, or like have something for it. Fire Spitter already have a super negative effect on it. You cannot control the board. And why is its stats so horrendous? You can easily make a Fire Spitter a 3/3. You can probably even make it a 3/4 without any issues. Honestly, just buff the weird small cards. Shield Oracle, very close to being interesting. Just buff it a slight amount. Shield Oracle is actually really cool. I have tried to play it in some what's it called? Artifact decks. I think it's interesting, but it's just not good enough stats wise. 3 mana for 0/5, like, and it's too easy to just hit it. You put it behind the thing that you want to save, but they just hit this, and now it didn't do anything to the board. It just died for free. Just buff it a little bit, see what happens. Spelljammer, the same. Spelljammer has a negative effect for yourself when you play it. If your opponent kills it right away, I lost a draw, and my opponent is in the same situation as before. The old Spelljammer in Duelyst 1 always benefited the player who played it first, which was why it was so strong. But because this one has a negative for the player who plays it first, there's no reason for it to have negative stats as well. Just give it neutral stats. You could even make it a 3-5, and I think it would be fine. But try it with a 3-4 or a 2-5. Like, try to make Spelljammer interesting. There might be some interesting situations for this. Shieldmaster, also just too bad. Just buff it. There's so many skins of this, and even if you want to play it in some kind of health buffing deck, why is it so poor in stats? Like, seriously, it has 1 more health than Spelljammer, and Spelljammer already sucks. And +1 to 1 or 2 dudes doesn't make up for the fact that it has literally 2 stats worse than Duelyst 1, where it also sucked. So just make it a 2-6, see what happens. Sun Elemental, also one of those. It's okay interesting, but the stats are just so poor. After 1 turn here, it becomes a 3-6, which is still negative for stats compared to a fucking golem. Like, just make it a golem, and then at least there might be some interesting stuff. You can even make it a 1-8 just to make a difference, but this guy needs more stats. Same with Tethermancer. What does the effect actually do? It doesn't do anything, and it's so expensive. Just make the stats better. It's still not a golem, so it's okay to have this kind of stat line. Sworn Defender, just buff the stats. All of these are so understated, I have no idea why. Serpenti, just buff it. Why does Serpenti suck so much? Seriously, and you're even making a new skin for it. Just make it better. It still sucks in this situation anyways. And then, the only nerf, Archon Spellbinder. Seriously, Archon Spellbinder have the same stats as the 6-mana Golem, which is an 8-8. I would even argue that 7-9 is better. And the Golem's whole point of the Golem is that they are overstated, but have no effect. There's no reason for Archon Spellbinder to have the same amount of stats, or even better, and actually have a useful effect. An effect that makes it so that if your opponent has removal, which this game is all about having removals or not, that they are now closer in tempo. Or in some situations, you can just shut down some decks that are spell-based. You can make Archon Spellbinder 6-8, and it will still be fine. Eclipse also just terribly understated. If you play the Golem and hit your opponent for 8 in the face, like, it's the same as them having to kill this, then they get 8 damage. This has no pressure on the board, you can just ignore it most of the time, or you can remove it with some easy removal. I think Eclipse has the potential to be a build-around card, so just allow it to be a build-around card. Just allow more cards to be defining. Rook, the same with Rook. The rebalance of Rook is very interesting, but the actual practical implication, I have tried to make a Rook deck. Even when everything works, it deals 4 damage at maximum. And that's your opponent playing into it. That's all the position working out. That's me having a random planar scout at the correct time. And it's still just, I deal 4 damage and that's it. You can easily X2 on Rook. It's dead almost all the time. Just either X2 or +2 here. But I think X2 make the reward bigger. Make people play into the card as a build around more. Pado, I think, honestly, just remake Pado. But in this case, just make it so that the spots, make it less random. Teleport the stuff out to the border. It gets that pushing feel where it comes down and it pushes everything away from it. That feeling gets better with this remake. But honestly, completely change it is also an option. But Pado, it's a legendary. There's no reason for the legendaries to be so horrible. Chimera, I also think Chimera is just not a fun card. Oh, you get an egg, or oh, you get a Mechasaur. It's not fun gameplay. It's not fun for you. It's not fun for the opponent. But Chimera has what it takes to be a build-around card. You can put it in your self-damage whatever deck, and now you're having a boss unit in that deck. So I think you can keep a little bit of the randomness, make it summon a random free cost, for example, from your factions, which means, oh, now you also have to think about which factions to put it in. Just much more interesting as a deck builder. And then Grailmaster. I put down a few examples of Grailmaster because Grailmaster has no purpose. It's a thing you put down. even if you synergize into it, let's say you play a wall deck, you synergize into it, then you get provoke and flying and ranged on a guy. Like, why? That doesn't matter at all. It's already big. It doesn't need a bunch of random shitty keywords. So make it more interesting to build decks around it. And you hear this a lot from me because I think the strength of Duelyst is not only competitive gameplay on the board. From Duelyst 1, the strength is that there's so many cards that you can use to build decks around, to have interesting interactions, to have fun. And the game needs to be more fun for casuals or for semi-casuals. Like, make more things you can build decks around. Deck building is fun. So my suggestion for Greymaster here is it can just steal all the effects of all the units you summon. Or you can get the keywords of the minions you summon, and then if you summon multiple things, you can share those keywords around. I'm trying to keep like the spirit of the original Greymaster here, but honestly I think Greymaster could also just be, here you have art to make a full new card, just rework it, right? Or if you really want to keep it close to the original, then at least the unit that you summon gains all the keywords that Greymaster has. So now if you play Greymaster, you play walls, you get 3 walls. The first one, this one gets flying, the wall has flying. The second one, now this one also has provoke. Now that wall has provoke and flying, and then the next one has frenzy and provoke and flying, for example. You can still hear that it kind of sucks, but at least there is a reason to put it together. And then my last card here is a meme. It's Prismatic Illusionist. I just put in a bunch of bullshit so that your opponent, when you summon the illusions, doesn't know which one is the real illusionist. Everything will just look like an illusion. I don't think you should actually do this, but I think it's just something fun you could do to make the card more interesting. Okay, so thank you for watching my TED Talk. It actually turned out to be a whole fucking hour. I'm sorry about that. But this is my suggestions. I would love to hear from you, either in the comments or whoever I'm sending this to directly. Hit me up.